And our first guest over on my right here is Jakub from Carbon Studios, a lead game and level designer. Jakub, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
So for those who are maybe not familiar or have not had the pleasure of playing the Wizards, can you please tell us about your creation?
Sure. So The Wizards is a VR spellcasting game in which you take role of a young apprentice who needs to stop the invasion of orcs that's invading Meliora. And the gist of the game is that you actually use the spells with your own hands. You cast them, you throw them, and use your hands to do all the magic in the game. So the better you are as a wizard with your hands, the better you can do the game and you can explore the world.
Awesome. Were you at all inspired by Doctor Strange, or is this more from previous history in fantasy?
Actually, when we asked this question internally, everyone gave a different answer. Some people pointed at Doctor Strange, some at Harry Potter, some at Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. So we took all the best from all other wizards that are out there in the pop culture world.
Very cool. Well, it was very well done. What does the 3dRudder, I guess, specifically bring to the Wizards and ultimately to the PSVR gamer?
So as I mentioned, our game is heavily based on your hands and using them to cast spells. So you can use your legs to maneuver while you are in combat. So when you're facing orcs, you can actually use the 3dRudder to move around and focus your hands on killing them with your ice bow, fireballs, and all other spells. So this really helps out to coordinate your hands and legs in the game. And since the PlayStation Move controllers are a bit restricted on the control side, the 3dRudder is perfect to control the character in the game.
Absolutely. Jason, I'll get into this a little bit in a little more detail, but yeah, it's definitely a game changer in the Wizards. As far as implementation goes from a technical standpoint, how did you find that process of implementing the 3dRudder into your game?
The process was actually quite simple since we already had a head start from the PC version in which we also implemented 3dRudder. But even without that, the implementation is rather painless and quite easy. The only thing we had to consult was the specific movements, if the speed of turning and moving forward and sideways is right for the guidelines set by 3dRudder. So it was just tweaking those options so everyone has a perfect experience using 3dRudder.
My final question to you would be, Jakub, as a gamer, how has your experience been using the 3dRudder with the Wizards?
Oh yeah, so it's just perfect for the hand combat since I just can walk around with my feet and throw spells with my hands. So it adds up to the freedom of control within the game. So I'm really satisfied with the 3dRudder.
Well, yeah, and you've done an amazing job of it. So on that note, thank you, Jakub, for joining us for our 3dRudder themed episode. And again, thank you for joining us, and thank you for bringing us rudder support to the Wizards.
Yes, sure, appreciate it. All pleasure.
And jumping into our personal experiences of the Wizards, Jay, I would say that of the early lineup of games, the Wizards was probably my favorite utilization of the rudder. Not to take away from any of the other amazing games and experiences with the rudder, but the Wizards has two things going for it. One, an absolute need for it because it's got so much hand gesturing. And when you're in combat situations, it's just game changing that I can do all of this stuff and not have to worry about throwing a hand backwards. Because a lot of times I did spend the game backpedaling to get away and trying to shoot off. And so different. If you watch any PC gameplay, you could see that everyone was running around like mad people and conjuring away, and we couldn't do that until now. So that's awesome. And also, I think that the implementation of the rudder is fantastic as well. I love the way that they did the just the, I guess, sensitivity of walking and running and turning and going backwards. I felt that it was really well implemented and super intuitive. How did you feel about the Wizards with the rudder?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you with the moving forward and back, the speed that we didn't have just playing the regular game itself. And as much as I love the game, it was kind of, I could only play it in small increments at first, just because so much movement and doing the hand gestures would get rough for me. So I'd only be able to do it for smaller increments, and then I'd try to do a little more and more each day. But with the rudder, it was easier for me to go longer because I was just having to just barely concentrate on the hands, and then the feet just came naturally in there. But yeah, being able to go slow, look around the corner, and then move fast and get away if you needed to, or go straight back while you're conjuring up a fireball to throw while you're still moving back and not having to point back at the same time.
This was a really good example, I think, in every possible way of what the rudder could bring to games, because it kind of touched on almost everything that we would do. Like it had running and turning, and then having to backpedal, and then like actually like use your hands completely independently to like, shoot stuff. So there was that aspect, but it also had puzzles with like pressure pads and staircases that you had to walk around, and then even had teleportation where you had to do big jumps and then continue to run and turn, and it really was one of this and Honor and Duty were two of the games that were like high speed, high movement, and I was able to really see like, can I do this? Like, is it going to have the what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of the resolution in its control to be fine-tuned enough to be able to like swerve through small spaces and go up ladders. And the Wizards was one really, really good example of what I think we can expect with like Sorrento and future games. So, the Wizards, like, hand clap. Well done.
Some of the best movement schemes between the moves, the teleportation, and the by far the best combination of all three that I've seen. Great stuff.